Okay, so for this deep dive, you sent over a YouTube video,
Mm-hmm.
and it's already analyzing another video.
Right.
And that video was analyzing some document,
Yeah.
and frankly, I don't even think anybody even remembers what it said anymore.
It's gotten so meta that the original content is kind of lost to time.
Right?
We're analyzing an analysis of an analysis.
It's like, at what point does this become just like intellectual navel-gazing?
Right.
Especially because like this YouTube video you sent me
Yeah.
is basically making all the same points and arguments
Mm-hmm.
as the video it's analyzed.
It does make you wonder, what's the point?
Yeah.
Are we just rehashing the same old ideas, or is there something new to be gained from this fourth level deep dive?
Well, maybe we can figure that out.
Okay.
So let's start by breaking down some of the main arguments that this meta video is presenting.
Okay.
It starts off with those familiar theories about the original document.
Right.
Lost languages,
Mm.
secret codes, that sort of thing.
Sure. It's interesting how those theories persist even though we don't even know what the document said.
Right.
It speaks to our inherent desire to find patterns and meaning, even in the absence of concrete evidence.
The video uses that analogy of hearing rustling leaves and assuming it's a predator.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to make those snap judgments,
Right.
even if they're not always accurate.
Exactly. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
But it can also lead us down these strange rabbit holes, especially when you're dealing with multiple layers of interpretation like this.
So then the video goes on to talk about those more philosophical interpretations.
Okay.
Mantras.
Mm-hmm.
Lullabies, the idea that repetition can evoke certain mental states.
Yeah, it's like those jingles or earworms that get stuck in your head.
Right.
You just can't get rid of them,
Even when you try to forget them.
even when you try to forget them, yeah.
Maybe our brains just can't handle meaninglessness, and they try to impose meaning even where there is none.
Yeah.
That mental palate cleanser idea is back again, too.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of absurdity to break up the constant information overload.
Although at this point I'm wondering if the mental palate cleanser concept itself has just become a cliche.
Yeah.
Another recycled idea in this endless loop of meta-analysis.
It's like the video is relying on the same tired arguments that were maybe interesting the first time around,
Right.
but they lose their impact with each successive iteration.
Exactly. It's like reheating leftovers. The first few times they're still pretty good,
Yeah.
but eventually they just become bland and unappetizing.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
We've got this meta video making the same points as the video it's analyzing.
Right.
And who knows what the original document even said?
Yeah.
Is this whole deep dive just an exercise in futility?
Well, before we throw in the towel, maybe we should take a closer look at how this meta video is actually constructed.
Okay.
Does it offer anything new in terms of its approach or analysis, even if the arguments themselves are familiar?
Okay, that's a good point. Let's shift gears a little bit and analyze the analysis, so to speak.
Okay.
What techniques is this video using to make its case?
Mm-hmm.
How is it framing the arguments?
And perhaps more importantly, is it doing anything interesting or insightful with those arguments?
Yeah.
Or is it just regurgitating them?
Right.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. So you're saying we should look beyond the content itself and analyze the way this meta video presents its arguments.
Exactly. Even if the ideas aren't new, maybe the presentation is doing something interesting.
Right.
Like how does it use visuals? What kind of tone does it strike?
That's a good point. One thing that stands out to me is the heavy use of humor.
Oh,
It's constantly poking fun at the absurdity of the whole situation.
yeah, like all the over-the-top sound effects and the exaggerated facial expressions.
Right.
It's almost like a parody of those like serious intellectual analysis videos.
But does that humor actually serve a purpose beyond just entertainment?
Yeah.
Is it trying to make a deeper point about the limits of analysis itself?
Maybe it's suggesting that we shouldn't take this whole thing too seriously.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to laugh at the absurdity of trying to find meaning in something as meaningless as whatever that original document was.
I'm reminded of the data art movement,
Okay.
which embraced absurdity and nonsense as a way to challenge societal norms and expectations.
Right, like Duchamp's fountain.
Mm-hmm.
A urinal presented as art.
Exactly.
It's shocking. It's funny. And it forces you to question what art even is.
What's fascinating here is that the meta video itself could be seen as a kind of ready-made art, just like Duchamp's fountain.
Okay.
It takes something pre-existing, in this case, the analysis video that it's critiquing, and reframes it in a way that makes you see it in a new light.
So maybe the point of this meta video isn't to provide any new insights or arguments,
Yeah.
but to challenge the very format of intellectual analysis.
It's like meta-commentary on meta-analysis.
Yeah.
It's using humor and absurdity to highlight the inherent subjectivity of interpretation.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But how does this apply to us, the listeners?
Right.
We're not art critics or philosophers. What are we supposed to take away from all this?
Well, I think there are a few practical lessons here.
Okay.
First, it encourages us to be more aware of our own biases and assumptions when we're analyzing information.
Okay.
What we perceive as meaningful might be influenced by our own pre-existing beliefs and experiences.
So basically take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Even those seemingly objective analyses.
Exactly. And second, I think it encourages us to be more playful and less rigid in our thinking,
Okay.
to embrace the possibility of multiple interpretations and to find humor in the absurdity of life.
It's like don't get so caught up in finding the right answer that you miss the joy of exploration and discovery.
Precisely embrace the what-if mindset. Question everything, but don't be afraid to laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Which brings us back to that initial question. Is there any point to this endless cycle of meta-analysis?
Perhaps the point is not to arrive at a definitive answer, but to keep the conversation going, to challenge our assumptions, spark new ideas, and maybe even have a few laughs along the way.
Okay, that makes sense. But this whole discussion of meaning and interpretation is getting pretty abstract.
Yeah,
Can we ground this back in reality a bit?
absolutely. Let's connect these ideas to some real-world examples in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore how these concepts of meta-analysis and the search for meaning play out in fields like science history and even our everyday lives.
Okay, so we've talked about this meta video analyzing and analysis.
Yeah.
And how it all ties into art movements like Dadaism.
Right.
But you mentioned bring this back down to earth a bit.
Yeah.
How does this concept of meta-analysis and this search for meaning play out in real life?
Well, let's take the field of science, for example.
Sure.
Scientific progress often involves meta-analysis.
Okay.
Researchers review numerous studies on a particular topic to identify patterns and draw broader conclusions.
So it's like a scientist looking at a stack of research papers
Right.
instead of a stack of YouTube videos. They're still analyzing analyses.
Precisely. And just like with our Poopoo Peepee situation, scientists have to be mindful of their own biases
Right.
and assumptions when they're conducting meta-analysis.
Okay.
Are they only including studies that support their pre-existing theories? Are they overlooking contradictory evidence?
It's like what we were saying earlier about taking everything with a grain of salt.
Right.
Just because a study has been published doesn't mean it's the definitive truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Healthy skepticism is crucial, especially when you're dealing with complex scientific questions.
Yeah.
And this applies to other fields as well. Think about history.
Okay.
Historians are constantly reinterpreting events based on new evidence or shifting perspectives.
So history is basically one giant meta-analysis of the past.
You could say that we're always trying to make sense of what happened
Right.
to extract meaning from the past, but that meaning can change depending on who's doing the interpreting and
Yeah.
what lens they're using.
It's like that saying, history is written by the victors.
Right.
But maybe with a more nuanced approach, we can start to see history as a collection of competing narratives, each with its own interpretation of events.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
We need to be able to evaluate different sources, consider multiple perspectives,
Right.
and form our own informed conclusions.
And this all ties back to that Poopoo Peepee video, right?
Yeah.
Even something as seemingly meaningless can spark a conversation about how we interpret information, how our biases shape our understanding,
Right.
and how meaning is often subjective and fluid.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even when we think we're dealing with objective truth,
Yeah.
there's always another layer of interpretation at play. We're constantly analyzing, reanalyzing, and making meaning of the world around us.
So the point isn't to find like a single definitive answer,
Right.
but to engage in that process of critical thinking, to question our assumptions, and to be open to new perspectives.
And to find a little humor in the absurdity of it all. After all, if we can't laugh at ourselves and the strange ways we try to make sense of the world, what can we laugh at?
This deep dive has been a wild ride, going from a nonsensical document to the depths of meta-analysis and back again.
It just goes to show that even the most absurd starting point can lead to some surprisingly profound insights.
Absolutely. So to our listener out there, the next time you encounter something that seems utterly meaningless or confusing,
Yeah.
don't just dismiss it.
Right.
Take a moment to ask, what if?
Mm-hmm.
What if there's something interesting here?
Yeah.
What if this can teach me something about the way I think and interpret the world?
You might be surprised by what you discover, and if nothing else, you might have a good laugh along the way.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of meta-analysis and the search for meaning. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and don't be afraid to embrace the absurd.